The city of Greater Geraldton in regional Western Australia, 450 kilometres north of Perth, is a local government authority with two urban centres, a hamlet of 600 people with a large Aboriginal population, and the regional centre, which has around 35,000 residents. The city is implementing an innovative and internationally recognised program of deliberative democracy, designed to involve residents in city decision-making from the ground up. It began in 2008 with a community visioning program. Themes and ideas came together through this program, and then in 2010, the 2029 and Beyond program was launched. Over time, more than 3,000 people were engaged in a variety of deliberations about community needs, desires and aspirations. A unique document, the Community Charter, was launched in 2012 and followed by the adoption of a strategic community plan in mid-2013. This would underpin Council's decision-making into the future. At the heart of this covenant with the community was a commitment to transparent and inclusive decision-making. The 2029 and Beyond program, having achieved what it set out to do, evolved into a new program, the #Changes CGG Community Program, at the heart of which would be a deliberative democracy methodology called Participatory Budgeting. In this, Council handed over responsibility for prioritising its operational budgets to two large panels comprising community members chosen at random from the populace. They worked hand in hand with Council staff, revising and reviewing every capital works plan and service offered by the city. Leading the way, CEO Ken Diem and Director of Creative Communities, Andrea Selvey.
About 3 years ago, this council committed to working in a more deliberative way with our community and improving our engagement with the community. This work was developed under the banner of 2029 and Beyond, because what we were looking at was a long-term view, not just what was happening immediately or in people's backyards, but in the longer term and for the good of the entire community, and involving the community in deciding that direction. The various activities we undertook included world cafes, deliberative surveys and forums, a very large-scale inquiry by design in which 250 people participated in strategic planning. All of that information has been gathered and has informed in a very real way our strategic community plan. The community has told us very clearly over the last 3 years we've involved the community in conversations about what it wants, and through that process they've made some very aspirational recommendations and set some goals and directions that they would like to see this community achieve. But what we haven't done is then talked about priorities and how those things can actually be paid for, whether this community has the capacity to pay for the things it's said it wants.
When I arrived as CEO, I was really pleased that we had done a wide range of community consultation, very in-depth consultation. So I had a number of strategies, strategic reports, strategic plans that raised the expectations of the community in terms of what the council would deliver. It wasn't until we actually pulled those expectations out and put them in one document to have a look at them that we realised that we're looking at $500 million worth of capital works. And now we simply can't afford that. We only have $67 million to spend over the next 10 years on capital, and we have $500 million of works that the community has some level of expectation that we're going to deliver. So we have to go back to the community, we had to go back to the community and say to them, well, this is what you've told us that you want, now tell us what is the relative priority. That's exactly the situation that we were in a couple of years ago, where we engaged the community. We had a wish list of $500 million. So we've gone back to the community and we said, look, we simply can't afford this, and we've actually given them a budget. So we have a long-term financial plan. Our council is currently operating in a deficit, and we have a plan to get back into a surplus position in a number of years. And so that long-term financial plan sets the budget. So the community can have all the wishes that they want, but we only have a limited amount of money. So their task, both in the 10-year capital works plan and the range and level of services, is to come up with some prioritisation. And it's just like your home budget. So you've got a fixed amount of income and you have to make sure that you can live within your means.
The deliberative process is underpinned by a philosophy of bringing technical expertise and community expertise and community wisdom together for really wise decisions. And participatory budgeting and the process we've undertaken, or the methodology we've undertaken for our participatory budgeting is exactly that. So the technical expertise within the organisation is recognised, and it was recognised by the community as well, because when they put their priorities together, they said, we know we need the expertise of staff. Likewise, internally, we recognise we need the wisdom of the community, and the real power and real wisdom is by bringing those two elements together.
Participatory budgeting is about engaging the community in a very real way to have a say in terms of where the council spends its money. And as part of the changes program, what we're trying to do is align what the council does with the community expectations. The whole premise of the hashtag changes is to engage our community and align what we do with what the community expectations are. Now, we could have simply just left it to the council, and it is the council's role, and ultimately the council will make the decision. So we're not taking the power away from the council to make the decisions that they're elected to do. What we're doing is effectively engaging the community to better inform the council in terms of what the community would like to see done. Councillors are elected to represent the interests of the community. What better way of doing that than involving the community in the decision making? I've worked in local government for 28 years, and I see often councils making decisions that don't necessarily align with the community's expectations or the community's values. I see this as a fantastic process to bring that alignment, to make sure that what we deliver as a council is consistent with what the community wants from our council. So I see it as a win-win for the community and a win for the council.
Participatory budgeting has been done in other places and done very well. However, what's different about this process is that we are opening up our entire budget, our services or our operational budget, but also our capital works budget. What's happened in other places, there have been elements of what we're doing, but not the entire package. So in some cases, there is a quarantined percentage of the budget that's handed over to the community. In Canada Bay, they ran a wonderful process that looked only at their services. But what we're doing here is quite different. We are opening all elements of our budget up to a conversation with the community.
And everything is on the table. There's no holds barred. We are opening up everything, and we're giving them a level of access that I've never heard of before in local government. So they are going right down to the tin tacks in some cases and critically examining everything we do, as opposed to being at a superficial level or having a quarantine budget allocation within which they can play around. This is serious stuff, and for that reason going into it was really, really scary, but coming out of it very, very satisfied with the results.
The two community panels have been chosen through a very random selection process. So we needed to be very careful that in no way did we influence the selection of the panel members. So it was done at arm's length from the city. The city wasn't involved directly in recruitment. Recruitment was done by an independent agency and on a purely random selection basis. We did give some guidelines. So the guidelines were that the panel makeup needed to reflect the demographic makeup of our community, so age, gender. We did also acknowledge there were a couple of groups, or 3 groups within our community who would possibly be underrepresented in a purely demographic stratification. So we have we did a targeted recruitment for young people, so youth under the age of 18, to get 2 representatives on both panels. We also specifically did a targeted recruitment with the Aboriginal community and with the Mullawa community. So if we had just gone on the pure random geographic and demographic profiling, we would have had sort of a 0.3 person from Mullawa, and that, you know, obviously wasn't appropriate. We recognised that the needs of the Mullawa community needed to be represented well in this panel. So bulk of it was random selection, with these few specific groups where a more targeted recruitment was conducted.
From my perspective, we can consult or engage with the community, and often what we'll get is the top of mind outcome or solution, and we want to go deeper than that. We really want to get to the heart of what the community wants from our council, and to do that, the community has to make that commitment to get an understanding of what our council does. So my expectation is that those people that participated in the process and they're at their barbecue, I know that we now have more than 30 advocates of the council that have an understanding of how difficult it is to manage community expectations with the council's capacity to pay and the community's willingness to pay. At the very beginning of the process, when we get the community panel together, one of the first tasks is to identify their values and align those with the known values of the community from the strategic community plan. I think many of them walk in there with preconceived notions, with perhaps pet projects or a preconceived perception on how the council performs and what the council should be doing. We quickly saw that disappear, and then the community panel start to work as a group, and very, very comfortable that the values of that group were aligned with the strategic community plan, and that, you know, pet wishes, pet desires were put aside for the greater good of our community. And that's evidenced by the product that they've produced. When you look through the priority listing, you see a smattering of projects across our community. The key outcomes of the panel, firstly, and for the very first time in the history of this community, and probably for the very first time in Australia, we've engaged with the community to come up with a priority listing of all our known capital works. And that's been developed with community input, but also our technical input from staff. They had a 50-50 weighting. We've gone back to the community panel and showed them the final results of their work, and they're very, very satisfied. And now we go to council. The other thing that's really important that came out of this program is that we now have a methodology for assessing future capital works. So we work with the community panel and said, we said to them, we're unlikely to have a community panel every year. So as a legacy from the work that you're doing, we need a methodology that we can apply to assess the capital works from a community perspective, and we'll also assess it from a technical perspective, and bring them together to come up with the relative ranking. And we have that, and that's a fantastic product. Well, the different process here is that typically in local government, the executive would review the capital works needs of the council and the community, and would make a recommendation to the council. The council will also have their viewpoint based on their understanding of what the community wants, and then you go through a budget process. We're doing all that up front before we actually get to council. So when we get to council, there's a weighting in terms of what the executive are suggesting needs to be done and what the community needs to be done. So the council are in the best informed position to make a decision on behalf of the community. We have a watchdog, and our watchdog's called the Independent Review Committee, and that's made up of business leaders and community leaders, a panel of between 5 and 7, including our mayor and deputy mayor. And their job is simply to observe and to ensure that the process is free from bias, the interaction is transparent, and that we're accountable. At the end of every community panel meeting, all of the staff and consultants are thrown out of the room, and the Independent Review Committee go through, have a discussion with the community panel about, was there bias shown? Did you feel that you were being railroaded? Did you sense that the council or staff were trying to push you down a particular path. How satisfied were you with the way the process was undertaken? And then the Independent Review Committee then meets with the executive of the council each week and gives us a summary of their findings. And if they find, and they didn't, but if they found that perhaps we were being too forceful in terms of pushing the community down a particular path, they keep us in check.
At the end of each workshop, we do survey the panellists to see, how they have found the day, whether the information they've been provided has been adequate, and their interaction with staff has been at a quality. And without fail, we've had such praise back about staff, the way they conduct themselves, their professionalism, their integrity, and the fact that they do manage to stay neutral, even though we're talking about services and the jobs about which they're so passionate. So the panel members recognise that and really appreciate that.
So as a CEO, I've never been more proud to work in an organisation than I am today to work for the City of Greater Geraldton, and that's because of the staff and the staff's participation in this process. They've embraced this with open arms. And before we went into it, 61% of our staff said, we want change, and more importantly, we want to be part of that change, we want to participate in that change. This program has touched staff at every level in our organisation, and they've all risen to the challenge. It's amazing on a Saturday when I come to observe the community panel going through the deliberations, to see the staff from my organisation that have given up their whole day, and many of them without pay, because they value the process and they value the outcomes. So it's important to realise that the #ChangesCGG program is internally and externally focused. So we're going to the community as part of #ChangesCGG community to help them develop our 10-year capital works program, and for them to help us to review our range and level of services. So that'll align what we do with what the community expects of us. The other element is #ChangesCGG staff, and it's an internally focused program to improve the effectiveness and productivity of our organisation. If you understand what the community wants and what the expectations are, you have to have the capacity to be able to deliver that. And the capacity comes from the capacity of your staff. So we need to have the right culture and behaviour in our organisation. We need to have the right business processes within our organisation, and we need to have the right strategic intent. When we have those when we have our staff working at the peak of their capacity and their effectiveness, and we understand what the community wants, that's when we hit the goals. That's the sweet spot.
We recognise the importance of social media and making this a process, I suppose, that appealed to people who were in that space. So attracting the attention of people so that they would get involved via Facebook, Twitter, and social media platforms. And we have put a lot of effort into putting information up as it's evolving, putting it up through those mediums. Our Facebook page, particularly on Saturdays when the workshops are happening, attract a lot of attention. People are watching what's happening. So as posts are put up, people are sharing them, people are liking them, and keeping an eye on what's happening. So it's reaching a much broader audience than the 40 people or 35 people who are sitting in the room.